Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to the second last week. We're almost there. We got 4 classes left. Just before I forget, I don't think I will, but I'll remind you that Monday's a holiday. It's BC Day, so there's no class on Monday. Yeah, it's also Eid today. So if for all our Muslim friends, Eid Mubarak. Yeah, if you're here, or if you're not, that's okay too. What we'll do today is we will talk just a little bit. We'll review what we were talking about in terms of Republican Rome. We'll go over the questions that you have answered for me today, the ones I just asked you to do based on the reading. And then we'll probably have a little bit of a shorter class today just because it's Friday before a long weekend, and yeah, I think we can do that. So, who's here? KC is here. Hello again, KC. Hello again, not hello again, Lily, but hello, Lily. Good morning. Adalbert's here. Good morning, Adalbert. Karen's here. Good morning again, Karen. Lim is here. Hello, Lim. Hello again, Mashid. Min is here. Good morning, Min. Good evening to you, Tika. Jenna, good morning. And Pearly, good morning to you. Yeah. Okay. I don't think I have anything else to say. Let's get into it. Right. So we said that there were basically 3 periods to ancient Rome. It was a monarchy for a while under Etruscan kings. The Romans threw the Etruscan kings out. They established a republic, but then eventually the republic sort of mutated into an empire with a single person in charge. And that's kind of the period that we're sliding into now. You can see that we're roughly around 100 BCE, and so we're kind of just a few decades before the whole thing really comes apart. But you can see some evidence of that happening already, right? You can see some political and social and economic problems that the Roman Republic is struggling to resolve and doesn't really know how. Good morning, Jimmy, and good morning, Aliana. So we said this was the sort of political structure of the Roman Republic, right? With an assembly made up of patricians and plebeians that were in charge of passing laws, tribunes who were kind of special representatives of the plebeians, and they were able to veto legislation. And we had 2 consuls on top of that, who were kind of like presidents, if you will, dual presidents. And then a senate of kind of experienced ex-magistrates and ex-consuls who sort of advised the consuls and sort of passed some laws of their own. And then you had magistrates sort of scattered throughout Rome that were responsible for sort of doing government jobs, right? Heading up important government projects. So that was kind of how it worked. And we said that there was this cursus honorum, where if you wanted to run for office, if you wanted to work in the Roman government, that there was a bit of a ladder that you had to climb, right? You had to do 10 years of military service, and then you had to try to get yourself elected as a quaestor, and then you could move up to an aedile, and so on and so forth. And if you were lucky and you were successful and you were politically well connected, you might be able to be elected consul for a year. And so traditionally consuls could only served a 1-year term, and then they couldn't serve again for another 10 years. But of course, in the reading that you just read, you'll see that things start working differently toward the end of the Republic. But we'll get there. We said yesterday that after Rome successfully kicked the Etruscans out, they continued on to fight a series of wars within Italy, and so they united. All Italy was united under Rome, and then Rome started to expand its reach as well, right? They fought a few wars with Macedon. They fought a few wars with Carthage, which is in North Africa. It's in modern day Tunisia now. Fought a few wars with Macedon, fought a few wars with Carthage, won those conflicts, and basically made themselves the main power in the Mediterranean. I meant to switch this map out. This map comes a little bit later than the period that we're in. But by this point, the Romans are in charge of most of what you see in yellow. And so obviously they have all of Italy under their control, bits of Greece. They haven't made it all the way up into France there quite yet. That comes a little bit later. Same thing with Spain. But you can see North Africa there. That's where Carthage is, and so the Romans conquer that section of North Africa as well. And they're already in what's labeled Syria there, Syria or Palestine, and parts of modern Syria, Lebanon, and Israel are under the control of the Romans as well. So the amount of territory under Roman control is continually expanding, right? And it's, in some ways, it's good for Rome. It's making Rome very rich because all of those new Roman provinces are taxable, right? They get taxes from those provinces. And so there's lots of money pouring into Rome. But of course, it becomes very difficult to rule an area of land this big, right? I mentioned yesterday that communicating things is only by letter, right? You can write a letter to someone, and then someone has to carry that letter all the way there, and it can take weeks and weeks for Rome to send orders to a Roman governor in one of the provinces. And so really slow communication, really difficult to control a territory this large in ancient times. And again, let's remember that the Roman Republic was created basically just to rule Rome. That's really all it was for. It wasn't meant to rule huge sections of the Mediterranean. It was a political system meant to rule a city-state. And so as time goes on, that political system shows that it is not adequate for running that territory. Sorry, I'm just going to skip over that. Yeah, and so let's go to the questions I asked you here. Let's go to the questions I asked you. So there's a couple of Gracchi to deal with here, right? So Gracchi is the plural for Gracchus. So there's two guys with the last name Gracchus. They're actually brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. The older brother is Tiberius Gracchus, and what does he? Oh, I said purpose. What does he propose? What's his? He wants to change something, right? Because he's a Tiberius Gracchus gets himself elected as tribune of the plebeians, right? And so Jimmy says here he introduced a land distribution law called the Lex Sempronia Agrari in Latin, right? Lex Sempronia Agrari. Yes, he does. He does do that. And this Lex Sempronia Agrari, so the Sempronian agrarian law, benefits the state. I'm going to go back to this. Maybe I won't. Okay, so what this law was meant to do was redistribute land to poorer Romans. So what's happening is with all of this military conquest, most of the people in the army are poor farmers, and they're off, on the frontiers fighting for Rome. And while they're at home, their farms are failing. People are stealing their farm and their harvest, and sometimes their wives. And so many of these guys are away from home for so long, they're forced to sell their farms. And of course, who buys those farms but rich Romans. And so throughout this period, more and more land is being accumulated in the hands of rich Romans, and poor Romans are kind of losing their land. And so Tiberius Gracchus here says, hey, let's redistribute the land. Let's redistribute it and give it to poor Romans. And that's good for the state, because you need to own land in order to serve in the military. So more people will own land, more people will serve in the military. That's good for Rome, right? But of course, if you're a rich, wealthy Roman, you don't want your land redistributed, right? You want to keep your land and make money off it. And so Gracchus's law here, this Lex Sempronia Agrarii, is probably good for the Roman state. It's probably good for poorer Romans, but it's not good for rich Romans. And of course, rich Romans have political power, right? So Gracchus bumps into a lot of opposition in the Senate, right? The senators don't like this idea whatsoever, because rich Romans will lose a good chunk of their land. So what does Gracchus do? Well, he runs to the plebeian council, right? And so he gets that law passed there. That creates, well, let's just say that annoys the Senate, right? The Senate is not excited by what's happened, and he gets murdered, right? So Tiberius Gracchus gets murdered in the Senate, right? Somebody, who is it? Publius Cornelius Scipio, right? Scipio, that's okay, Ella. Scipio thinks that Gracchus is trying to put himself above everyone else, trying to gain power and make himself a king, right? And so the senators snap, they lose it, and they start beating Gracchus to death with chairs and whatever they can find. And so they murder him in the Senate for trying to redistribute land, right? And so the textbook points out this is the first instance of violence seeping into the Roman political sphere, right? Imagine if in the States, imagine if Nancy Pelosi beat Mitch McConnell to death with a chair because she didn't agree with him, right? This is how crazy things are starting to get in the late Republic, right? Things are really starting to get heated and violence is boiling over. So Gracchus, okay, good. And that proposal is later revived by his younger brother, Gaius Gracchus, right? Right, and this is Gaius Gracchus's proposal. So Gaius Gracchus wants, 10 years later, Gaius Gracchus comes along and he wants to redistribute land, but he also wants to grant Roman citizenship to the allies, to the people in city-states around Rome. And so that's not popular with the Senate either, right? And so the consul at the time gets a law passed saying that the consul can do whatever they have to do in order to safeguard the state. And so Gracchus knows that, the way that the consul is going to safeguard the state is to arrest him and probably execute him. And so he commits suicide, right? So again, you can see that politics is getting very extreme. People are being murdered, people are committing suicide, and you can see that a lot of it has to do with this increasing divide between the rich and the poor, right? So even though the Roman Republic is getting richer and richer because they're conquering all this land, actually the poorer Romans are getting poorer and poorer. So Rome is getting rich, but it's really only benefiting rich Romans. Poor Romans are not seeing their lives improve really at all. And so that's what's behind Gracchus's, the Gracchi reforms. But of course, none of those reforms really are really used because they both die. Shoot. Shoot, I answered this question, but what did you say for this question? What did you say for this question, people? Okay, so Pearly says the affair of the Gracchi was the first instance of violence, a violent conflict, a violent conflict between the populaires, so the sort of popular people, the regular people, and the optimates, right? The elite members of the Senate. That is true. Also shows the conflict between the rich and the poor. Yeah, so Rome on the whole is getting rich, but really only rich Romans are seeing the benefit of that. Poor Romans, not so much. They're actually losing their land, right? And I guess also the desire of people outside of Rome to become Roman citizens. So Rome's Italian allies actually want to become Roman citizens, right? They want a say, they want to be able to vote in Roman affairs, and they want to be able to run for political office in Rome. And so only citizens can do that. And so people that come from the surrounding area, they want to be Roman citizens as well. Growing conflict between the rich and the poor, good. And the use of violence to solve political problems. So again, imagine Nancy Pelosi beating Mitch McConnell to death on the Senate floor, right? That's a pretty extreme scenario to happen in the halls of government, right? And so here we start to see that happening, right? Violence is leaking into government affairs in Rome. The violence, it's a dangerous precedent. Yes, it absolutely is. And change the nature of Roman politics. Yeah. Okay. So then we hear about this dude here. We hear about this guy, Gaius Marius. And Gaius Marius is a famous military commander. He's consul 7 times, right? And so keep in mind, you were only supposed to be able to be the consul once, and then you had to wait 10 years, right? That was the rule. And Gaius Marius is not 170 years old, but the rules have been modified or broken, right? So people are holding the consulship for years at a time. So Marius is consul 7 times, which in the early republic is impossible, but here not so impossible, right? Individual powerful men are gaining more power within the system. So Marius here, he abolishes the property requirement for military service. So now anyone can serve in the military, whether they own land or not. He arms the troops and he pays them. So this is a change, right? In the ancient world, we said that in many cases people were farmers or craftsmen, and then when there was a military threat, they put down their farming tools, they picked up their sword and shield, and they went off to fight to defend their city-state or their country. But Marius here is creating a professional army, right? An army that is made of full-time soldiers. Their only job is to be Roman soldiers, and the state will pay them for that. So that's new. Arming his troops and paying, and changing tactics on the battlefield. Okay, good. Changed tactics from a legion of manipules to a legion of cohort. Honestly, I don't really know what that means. I know what a Roman legion is. It's a unit of a number of soldiers. I don't know how the cohort thing works, honestly. I know they mention it in the text, but I don't remember. What it is. The other thing that's important about Marius, and I don't think they did a good job of talking about it in the text. The other thing that's important about Marius is he creates a situation whereby if you're a soldier in the Roman army, in the professional Roman army, so being a soldier is now your job, he creates a situation where on your retirement, so when you retire from the army, your general will give you land. Okay, so you'll get a piece of land that you can retire to. You can build a house and a little farm, and you can retire there, and it'll be nice. Okay, so Marius creates that situation as well. But of course, the problem with that is that soldiers become more loyal to their generals than they do to the state, to Rome, right? Because when you finish your military career, your retirement package, right, the land that you're going to get doesn't come from the Roman state, it comes from your general. So you're going to be totally loyal to your general, whatever they say, because that's where your retirement is going to come from. That's who's taking care of you, not Rome, but your general, which again will wind up being dangerous a little bit later. And then there's this guy. Lucius Cornelius Sulla. What's Sulla's deal? What does he do that's so shocking? What does Sulla do that's so shocking? Lucius Cornelius Sulla. So he's consul at one point. He's a military commander. KC says he becomes consul. And so there's there's a couple things here. I'm going to jump ahead. So he starts his career under Marius, right? He's Marius's quaestor in a war in North Africa. He becomes consul a little bit later on. He's a distinguished general. And so the Romans are having trouble with this king in Asia Minor called Mithridates. And so Sulla wants to lead an army to go over there and conquer Mithridates' kingdom, because Sulla knows that if he does, he'll get lots of prestige and he'll make lots of money. Okay, so it's a very if he's able to command that to command that army and go over there, he's going to make a ton of money, right? Marius says no. Marius doesn't want him to go and has him kicked out of Rome, right? Marius has him kicked out of Rome, but Sulla comes back with his own army and invades Rome. So a Roman general is leading his army into Rome, and that's shocking, right? Normally what would happen is that Roman generals were not even allowed to enter the city of Rome with their army, right? They had to come in alone. But Sulla comes back with his army, takes command, goes off to fight Mithridates, comes back victorious and rich and with a big army behind him. And again, he takes control, right? He takes control of Rome as a dictator. Yeah, so he marches, Pearly says he marches on Rome, not once, but twice. The first time to get command against Mithridates, and the second time when he comes back. And this is the first time, sadly not the last, but the first time that a Roman general will actually march on Rome. So again, imagine, well, maybe we don't have to imagine that far, but imagine the US military attacking the US, right? Imagine the American military using its strength and power and technology to accomplish political ends in the United States, right? So yeah, this is totally unprecedented. It's totally wrong. It's totally shocking, but Sulla manages to do it anyway, right? So he rules Rome as a dictator for a little while. When he comes back to Rome, he issues a bunch of proscriptions. So he basically puts a list up of all of his political enemies, and people catch them and round them up, and he either punishes them or executes them or keeps all their stuff. Julius Caesar, who will become important later, gets rounded up in the process, but he doesn't get killed. He just gets all his stuff taken from him. I answered that question. Yeah, that's what he does. You can add your answers in there, but I answered that question already. I'm gonna sneeze here too, by the way. Okay, so we have this powerful army general, Sulla, right? He wants a command against Mithridates, a king out in Asia Minor. The Senate and Marius don't want to give it to him, but he uses his army to take it anyway. He goes and beats Mithridates, comes back rich and powerful, takes control of Rome, becomes a dictator, rounds up all his enemies and either kills them or exiles them or takes all of their money and their stuff. So pretty shocking things, right? Especially for a republic that is supposed to be democratic and is supposed to have all of these regulations in place so that one person can't get too much power. But here we see exactly that, right? We see Marius running for the consulship over and over and over again and getting it. We see Sulla using his army to basically take what he wants and sort of completely abuse the republic system. Yeah, so ridiculous, right? The old laws, the old rules, the old ways that the republic used to work is breaking down, right? People are using violence, and they're using their armies to basically take what they want. Right? And so increasingly, becoming consul of the Roman Republic won't be about votes. It'll increasingly be about bribes and money and actually just intimidation of violence, right? If someone wants to be consul, they'll simply take the consulship because they have a huge army behind them. Okay, last question. What's the significance of the civil war between Gaius Marius and between Lucius Cornelius Sulla? So again, we have Roman consuls that have loyal armies behind them fighting a civil war for power inside Rome. Right? So this is crazy stuff happening. Lots of people are getting killed. It's very chaotic, and the republic is not functioning, right? The democratic system is not functioning the way it should. So Pearly here says the Civil War showed an increasingly greater degree of competition in the republic. Yeah, so rich and powerful Roman men, or Roman men who aspire to greater power and greater riches, are increasingly using violence and intimidation and just completely ignoring the rules in order to get those things, right? And so 200 years earlier, becoming consul was a difficult thing, right? You had to serve in the military for 10 years, you had to get elected as a quaestor, and then you had to sort of get yourself elected over the years to other positions, and then finally, if you were good at all those jobs and people liked you, then maybe you could get elected consul, and you would be consul for a year, and then it would be sort of the glory of your family, and then you wouldn't be able to be consul probably ever again in your life. But here we see none of that, right? People aren't following the rules, they're not following the cursus honorum, they're simply using their armies to take what they want and to take it over and over and over again, right? So again, this entire the entire sort of republican system is starting to break down, and so powerful men are just taking what they want and using the republic for their own ends. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of where we are here. So by the late Republic period, so that's where we are, about 100 BC to about 30 BC. So there's about a 70-year period. Things are becoming increasingly chaotic in Rome, and they're becoming increasingly violent. Okay? So again, Rome has been at war for centuries at this point. They've expanded their territory and the number of places that are under their control. But in the process, Rome has kind of lost something. When we started out talking about early Republican Rome, we were talking about Roman values. And Romans were very conservative, right? They were very... they followed the ways of their ancestors. They followed the rules. They adhered to their traditions. And they had really strong ideas about service and sacrifice for the public good. And so Romans always felt, or at least traditionally they felt, that Rome came first, right? It was Rome, and then the gods, and then your family, and then you, right? So that was the order of importance, and Rome came before everything. But as you can see in the section you've just read, that's starting to disappear, right? And people are, basically enriching themselves and grabbing power for themselves, regardless of what it does to Rome and to the people, right? And again, we didn't really talk about the patron-client system, and I probably won't talk about it now. But we do have a situation where many of these powerful men have large armies behind them, and these armies are very loyal to their generals. And again, that's a problem, because some powerful men use their army in order to take power that they shouldn't be allowed to have. But again, when you have a loyal army behind you, you can do these things, right? And so, yeah, these generals of the late Republic increasingly ignore the rules and ignore tradition and even law to accomplish their own goals, to accomplish their need for wealth and for power and for glory, right? And so, again, we see Lucius Cornelius Sulla, who takes a command against Mithridates by force, and then comes back to Rome and takes Rome by force as well and rules it as a dictator. And the same thing will happen, and we haven't talked about this guy yet, but we will. The same will happen with this guy, Gnaeus Pompey. Pompey will do the same thing. He'll use his army to win glory, and he'll use it to become consul. Even though he's far too young, and even though he hasn't held any political office, he will take the consulship simply because he's a successful military general with a big, powerful army behind him. Let me just see here. Okay, so this is who we'll talk about on Tuesday. We'll talk about Caesar. I'm sure that all of us have, at the very least, have heard the name Caesar. And Caesar, again, is one of these powerful men who will abuse the Republic for their own ends. Caesar's got kind of an interesting story. He's an interesting person, and he will kind of bring about the end of the Republic. Caesar can be kind of a controversial figure. He seems to have been a brilliant general. He seems to have been a very astute political leader. He appears to have been a very good lawyer and public speaker. But again, he also seems to be aspiring to take over Rome as a king or an emperor or as something else. And so that's going to get him into trouble with the Senate. Sorry about the dog. That's going to get him into trouble with the Senate. And he, just like Pompey and Sulla before him, he's going to use his army to take what he wants as well. So he's a controversial figure that many people have different views on, but whether you like him or hate him or don't care about him, he has a critical role to play in the end of the Roman Republic. And that's kind of what we'll see on Tuesday. We'll walk through who Caesar is, what he does, and how he kind of helps bring this republic thing to an end. It also might be interesting to think, and maybe we'll try and think about this next week, how if we should take any lessons from the end of the Republic, right? Because the Republic was this sort of glorious dream that the Romans had. It functioned quite well for hundreds of years. It became inspirational for countries around the world later on to create their own republics, particularly the United States. But that whole system came crashing down and gave way to a full-on dictatorship, basically, right? Where there was one man in power of the entire Roman Empire. And so it might be interesting to think about whether there are some lessons that we should learn. If there's something to be considered, given that this republic that so many people were inspired by actually ended pretty badly, right? And you can see it happening here, where people are not respecting rules and laws and tradition. People are using armies and violence and bribery to simply take what they want and use the political system in Rome for their own gain, for their own ends, right? So there might be something to think about and talk about there. But for now, maybe what I'll do is I'll ask you if you have any. Do you have any questions about what's happening in Rome at this period, or about the generals or the army or the consulship or any of that stuff? There's a lot of stuff we're skipping over here as well. Again, there's one of the great things about studying Rome is that we know a lot of stuff, and so you can really get into it, but of course we don't really have time to dig too deeply into what's going on. And so there's quite a detailed story behind any of the characters that we're hearing about. The Gracchi, about Gaius Marius or Sulla or Pompey. We'll hear a little more about Pompey. We'll hear about a guy named Crassus. Of course, Julius Caesar is very popular. We'll hear about him. We know a lot about these guys and what they did and when. Caesar actually wrote a whole book that you can read. I think it's called Caesar in Gaul, and so you can read Julius Caesar's book that he wrote about his military campaign in sort of the south of France kind of thing in southern Europe. Do you mean, Karen, do you mean in Republican Rome? If you're talking about, maybe you can clarify for me there. In Republican Rome, the idea is that power is shared. Okay, so in most democratic systems in the U.S., in Canada, in ancient Rome, power is shared, and so the idea is that no one person can take too much power, right? And so in Rome, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of confusion going on sometimes about who's able to pass laws, but power is shared between the consuls, the assemblies, the magistrates, the Senate, and the tribunes, right? Everyone has a little bit of power, and so no one person or group is able to seize control of the entire system. Of course, unless you march in with your military and point swords at people, right? Then you can do it. But in a typical democracy, power is shared by a bunch of different entities, and so nobody can take too much power, right? And so you're actually kind of seeing that in the United States. If you've been paying attention to the news, you'll know that Donald Trump, I think yesterday, tweeted something about maybe thinking about postponing the election, right? So the Americans are supposed to have an election in November, and Donald Trump said something about, oh, maybe we should wait, right? Maybe we should have it later. But as many people have pointed out since then, he can't do that. He's not able to change the election date. The election date is in the Constitution, it's in federal law, and elections are under the control of Congress, the House of Representatives. And so in the US, power is shared between the Senate and Congress, the House of Representatives, and the President. Not to mention all sorts of other entities, but those are kind of the three big ones that balance power out. And so Donald Trump might say, well, I might want to have an election in 10 years, right? And that would allow him to stay in power for 10 years. But the balance of power, there are checks on his power, right? He's not able to do whatever he wants. Congress is the one who says when elections happen, and there's a federal law, and it's in the Constitution, right? So someone like Donald Trump is not able to take full power because power is shared with other entities. And so it's the same thing here in ancient Rome. The Senate, the tribunes, the assembly, the consuls, the magistrates, all of them have a little bit of power, and so nobody is able to just do whatever they want. Again, unless you march in with your army and start killing people, then you can do whatever you want. Okay, so I think that said, maybe that's where we'll leave it today. So keep in mind, of course, that you might want to work on your final paper over the weekend, because you got 3 days, because remember there's no class on Monday, it's BC Day. But other than that, I think I may let you go for the long weekend. So I hope everyone has a great weekend. Work hard on your stuff. If you have questions, I'm not sure what I'm doing this weekend, but if you have questions, you can Microsoft Teams message me or email me, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. For those of you who participated in the live chat, thank you very much. That was very good of you. No school on Monday. I'll see you Tuesday. So have a great long weekend. Have a great long weekend. I'll see you Tuesday. Okay? Bye.